Alright, before I start this video, I gotta let something loose. Why did you kill Jor-El? Why did you kill him? We get one freaking episode. Okay, we got two in the couple seasons ago where Tom Welling was playing a young Jor-El. And we get one episode of the real Jor-El and you kill him off? I have to admit, I kind of saw that coming. Sorry, I had to let that loose because I honestly, all week I was like, you know what, they're gonna kill him off in the end, just like they killed Laura off at the end of the episode Blue and Zor-El. So yeah, I spent the entire week thinking, please God, let him not get killed off. Please God, let him not get killed off. And you know what they did? They killed him off. So yeah. That's pretty much happened with Jor-El. Jor-El, he comes in this episode, and they show flashbacks to Kandor and Krypton. Kandor apparently got destroyed 20 years before Krypton got destroyed. And apparently that's where Zod and a bunch of other people were from. So yeah, anybody from Kandor is pretty much, they reveal in this episode, is a clone. They're not like time travelers, they're clones. And I kind of figured that when I saw the first episode where one of the Kandorians said, yes, now I'm using the term Kandorians, said, the last thing we remember is our blood being taken in Kandor. Doesn't that kind of spell out clone? Anyway, so yeah, that's what I thought of that whole thing. The thing that I didn't like about this episode is that it got so predictable. That's the only thing I didn't like. I think this is, although I was really hyped up for Jor-El coming on, this has got to be my least favorite episode of the season so far. But that doesn't mean it didn't have any good points. Good point. Julian Sands, the guy who plays Jor-El, is pretty freaking good. This guy, I think, did a great job as Jor-El, both in the flashbacks and in his clone form. I think this guy really, yeah, I don't think he is the equivalent of Terrence Stamp. When it comes to the voice of the Jor-El in the Fortress, but I think he comes pretty close, and he's no Marlon Brando either. So yeah, we see flashbacks to Krypton, which is always pretty cool. And one of the things that we see in these flashbacks is the origins of Jor-El and Zod's relationship that turns into a rivalry, and we get to see that these guys were actually pretty good companions. Like, you know, they were pretty good friends on Krypton. And pretty much what the Science Council, the big floating heads that were from the movies that they put in this show, they pretty much order Jor-El they order him to clone these people and put them in the orb. And they never decide, they reference the Stones of Power from season 4, but they never make the connection of why this orb is still the thing that is the one thing that can control Kal-El or Clark. You know, they never made that connection, but they made the connection to season 4. Anyway, so yeah, we got to see that Jor-El and Zod, they forced them to put their blood into the orb so that they would be clones too, because it was all in case Krypton got destroyed. Yeah, because that's never gonna happen. So yeah, their blood got put in the orb, and we see the reason why Zod hates Jor-El so much, and that's because this is a bit referencing to Davis or Doomsday, because there was this thing where Feora said back last season, we could never have a child. Well, that's not technically the case here. We find out Feora and Zod did have a child. He actually died as a baby because Zod has this hair. He says, this is the last thing I have of my son. And he asks Jor-El, could you please clone him for me so at least in another life I have a chance to hold my son in my arms. I have to admit, that was a very emotional side. This is from General frickin' Zod. This is the last thing, emotion is the last thing I would think to come from this guy. So yeah, that was pretty emotional, and they did it pretty well. And that's sort of what Jor-El's like, well, we can't really tempt fate, you know? Like, what's done is done. So yeah, Zod doesn't take that too well. And then Tess pretty much orders Jor-El to pretend he's the Blur because Zod thinks that's how he's going to get his powers. Zod ends up using that to find out that Jor-El has a son, because he didn't know before. Because when these guys got cloned, it was 20 years before Krypton was destroyed. Pretty much 20 years or 19 years before Kal-El or Clark was born. So yeah, I'm just trying to figure out where I left off. Yeah, Tess orders Jor-El to pretend he's the Blur. Jor-El either gets killed by Zod or he gets killed by one of Zod's troops or one of Tess's guys. They really never said who it is. Clark pretty much has a dark vengeance moment at the end, which I'll get to later. And he says, I'm going to make whoever did this to you pay. So yeah, also another thing is Clark pretty much stops denying to Tess that he's an alien. Because he literally picks her up like 4 feet off the ground by the neck and super speeds away from her. And he says, my father's name is Jor-El. That doesn't sound like a very human name. So yeah, pretty much that's where he doesn't say, my name's Kal-El, I'm an alien, pleased to meet you. He just says, you know what, I'm tired of putting up with this crap. Where's my old man? Get me to him. That's pretty much what happened. So yeah, I guess Tess, she knows at this point pretty much that Clark is an alien. But she knew that already. So the last scene is where we get to see... oh, by the way, there was a I have to admit, this was a very touching scene between Clark meeting his dad, really for the first time, and getting to actually speak to him. And of course, he's dying in his arms and bleeding to him. And it was a touching scene. I just wish you didn't do that. You didn't tease us like you did that. Like, I wanted to see like 5 minutes tops of Jor-El and Clark. But we got like a minute and a half. Tops! So yeah, if you can't tell, that ticked me off, but I have to admit that, like I said, Julian Sands did a good job. And it was a very touching farewell between Clark and Jor-El, although it was technically a meeting and farewell at the same time. So the last scene shows Clark at his father's grave, and he, very fittingly, brands the House of El symbol on his tombstone, or a rock. And he says, and Jor-El actually, his dying wish to Clark was save Zod, because he knows all the stuff that Zod did on Krypton, and he's like, you know what, save him before he becomes a darker person than he already is. Dude, he's pretty dark already. So Clark says, you know what, I've seen the guy that Zod becomes. You don't know what you're talking about. So there's no redemption for him. This was pretty freaking dark of Superman moment. So I guess it's the Clark vengeance phase. But here's what I don't get. Zod is standing there. He knows by now that this is Jor-El's son, because he's standing there smiling. Why the heck are you smiling? Clark has superpowers. You don't. He wants to kill you. You killed his father. Why the heck are you smiling? Dude, he's practically pointing a gun at your head. How in the world can you think, this is gonna be good for me? Are you friggin' stupid? So yeah, that's pretty much my review on Smallville's episode Kandor. Yeah, I have to say that the moments with Jor-El and the flashbacks were pretty good. But this was sort of the episode where the season was going so well, and then they didn't fall. They just kind of lowered a little bit. Maybe that much from where they used to be. So yeah, I'd say the episode had its fine moments, but it wasn't something that I could just go, wow, I could watch this over and over again like I could some of the other episodes before it this season. So yeah, that is my review on Smallville Kandor. Alright, see you guys, bye.